I remember the coldness first. Not from the air conditioning, but from the room itself.
The courtroom had this weight to it. Like every word ever spoken there still hung in the air, waiting to crush someone new.
I sat in the second row, hands in my lap, eyes down. I'd been in rooms like this before. Different buildings, same feeling. That sense that everyone is deciding something about you, and you're not part of the conversation. My caseworker sat 3 seats away. She smelled like coffee and paperwork. She didn't look at me much. I think that's just how it goes after a while. When you've seen enough kids cycle through, you stop making eye contact. I was 18. Technically an adult. But in that room, I felt like I was 10 again. The lawyer on the other side kept shuffling papers. He had this expensive watch that caught the light every time he moved. I remember thinking, that watch probably costs more than everything I own. The walls were this pale gray color. The kind that's supposed to be neutral but just feels empty. There were portraits of old judges hanging near the ceiling. Men in robes who probably never spent a single night wondering if they have a bed tomorrow. I counted the tiles on the floor, 43 across. It's something I do when I'm nervous, count things. It gives my brain something to hold on to when everything else feels like it's slipping. Then the hearing started, and I realized something. No one in that room saw me as a person. I was a case number, a file, a problem that needed sorting. The clerk called out my name like she was reading from a grocery list. No emotion. No recognition. Just, next. I grew up in the system. That's the polite way people say it. The system, like it's some kind of structure, some safety net. But really, it's just a series of temporary stops. Places you land until someone decides you need to move again. My first foster home. I was 6. I remember the smell of that house. Lavender candles and old carpet. The mom tried. I think she really did. But her husband didn't want me there. You can always tell when someone doesn't want you there. It's in the way they look past you instead of at you. The way they say your name with a little sigh attached to it. The way they close the door just a little too firmly when they leave your room. I lasted 4 months. I remember the day they told me I was moving. The caseworker used words like better fit and different situation. But what I heard was, you're not working out, again. Then there was the family with 3 other foster kids. We all shared one room, bunk beds lined up like a barracks. The dad used to say we were lucky, that we should be grateful. Grateful for what? I never understood. Grateful for having a roof? For getting fed? Those are basic things. You don't get a medal for giving a kid the bare minimum. But I learned not to ask for things. I learned to make myself small, quiet, invisible when I needed to be. I learned which floorboards creaked, which cabinets I was allowed to open, which questions would get me in trouble. By the time I was 12, I'd been in 7 homes. 7 different sets of rules. 7 different families who looked at me like I was temporary because I was... Some were fine. Some were awful. Most were just neutral. A place to sleep. A place to exist until the next placement. One family forgot my birthday. Not in a we're too busy way. They just didn't know when it was. Didn't ask. Didn't care. Another family made me eat dinner in my room because I took up too much space at the table when their relatives visited. I learned what it felt like to be a secret. Something you hide when company comes over, but none of them were mine. And after a while, you stop hoping they will be. You stop imagining what it would feel like to hear someone say, "This is your home." You stop unpacking your bag all the way. You leave things folded at the bottom, ready to go. Because you know you'll need to move again soon. You stop putting pictures on the wall. Stop asking if you can paint your room. Stop calling it my room at all. It's just the room I'm in right now. Because the truth is, I was never anyone's first choice. I was the kid people took in because they got a stipend. Or because they wanted to feel good about themselves. Or because they thought it would be easier than it was. I overheard a foster mom once talking on the phone to her friend. She said, "I thought it would be like in the movies, you know? But he's just so damaged. Damaged. Like I was a broken appliance, something that didn't work right. But I was never chosen, not really. Not the way other kids were. The kids who had parents who drove across states to adopt them. Who had baby books and birth certificates and people who'd fight for them. I had a file folder. And a social worker who changed every 2 years. So when I sat in that courtroom, I already knew how it was going to go. The hearing was about my housing. My future, whether I'd get support transitioning out of care or if I'd be on my own. They called it aging out, like I was milk with an expiration date. At 80, the system stops, the checks stop, the placements stop. You're an adult now, figure it out. Never mind that most kids my age were heading to college with their parents helping them move into dorms, with meal plans and care packages and someone to call when they got homesick. I was getting a bus voucher and a list of shelters. There were people on both sides. Social services, a program director, my caseworker, a lawyer representing the state. And then there was the other lawyer, the one who kept looking at me like I was wasting everyone's time. He had this way of glancing at his phone between sentences, like he had somewhere better to be, someone more important to deal with. He stood up first, cleared his throat, started talking, and that's when I heard it. Your Honor, we need to be realistic here. This young man has been in and out of placements for over a decade. He struggled academically, behaviorally. He has no family support, no long-term stability. He's missed opportunities. He's been non-compliant with case plans. At the end of the day, he's just a foster kid, He said it so casually, like it was a diagnosis, a fact. Something that explained everything about me in 4 words. And the room didn't react. No one gasped. No one objected. My caseworker didn't even look up, because to them, it wasn't cruel. It was just true. I felt my chest tighten. My hands started sweating. I wiped them on my jeans, but they just got clammy again. I wanted to stand up, to say something, to scream that I wasn't just anything, that I wasn't non-compliant, I was surviving, that I didn't struggle because I was broken. I struggled because no one ever gave me a solid foundation to stand on, but I didn't, because part of me believed him. I looked around that courtroom, at the people in their suits, at the woman taking notes, at my caseworker staring at her phone, and I thought, maybe he's right. Maybe that's all I am. A kid who was never wanted enough, never loved enough, never worth the trouble, just a foster kid. A statistic, a file, a cautionary tale. The lawyer kept talking about resources, about statistics, about how kids like me don't usually make it. He pulled out numbers, percentages, charts about homelessness rates and incarceration rates and dropout rates for foster youth. He didn't say it to be mean. He said it like he was presenting evidence, cold, clinical, true, like my future was already decided, already written in some database somewhere. And with every word, I felt myself shrinking. I'd spent my whole life trying not to be invisible, trying to prove I mattered, that I was worth something. I tried so hard in school, even when I was moving every few months, even when I didn't have a quiet place to study or someone to help me with homework. I got a job at 16, saved every dollar. Because I knew I'd need it. I stayed out of trouble, kept my head down, did everything they told me to do, but it didn't matter. Because in that moment, I felt erased. Like I could stand up and walk out and no one would even notice. Like my entire existence was just paperwork. Just a burden on the system. Then the judge spoke. He'd been quiet the whole time, just listening, taking notes. His face didn't show much. But when he finally leaned forward, the room went still. He looked directly at the lawyer, and he said, "Counselor, I need you to stop right there." His voice wasn't loud, but it had weight. The kind of voice that makes you sit up straight without realizing it. The lawyer blinked. "Your Honor, I know what you were doing," the judge said. "And I'm telling you to stop." He set his pen down, folded his hands, and then he looked at me, right at me, not through me, not past me. At me. "Young man, would you stand up for me, please?" My heart dropped. I didn't want to stand. I didn't want to be seen, but I did it anyway. My legs felt shaky. My hands were trembling. The judge kept his eyes on me. And then he said something I'll never forget. "I've been a judge for 23 years. I've seen thousands of cases, thousands of people, and I can tell you this with absolute certainty." He paused. "You are not just anything." I felt something crack open inside me. Something I'd been holding closed for years. He continued, "You're not just a foster kid. You're a young man who survived a system that failed you over and over again. You're someone who kept showing up, kept trying, even when no one gave you a reason to believe it would matter." His voice softened. "Do you know how much strength that takes?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. My throat felt tight. My eyes were burning. He looked at the lawyer. This young man didn't choose to be in foster care. He didn't choose to be separated from his family. He didn't choose to be moved from home to home like he was disposable. He didn't choose any of this. But he's still here, still fighting. And I will not sit in this courtroom and let anyone reduce his life to a label. The room was completely silent. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. He is not a statistic. He is not a lost cause. He is not a burden. He is a person, a human being who deserves dignity, who deserves opportunity, who deserves to be seen. He turned back to me. And I see you. Those 3 words hit me harder than anything else. I see you. Not your file, not your case number, not your history, you. The judge kept talking. I'm granting the petition for extended support. This young man will receive housing assistance, educational resources, and access to counseling services. And I'm assigning a new caseworker, someone who will actually show up. He looked at my caseworker when he said that last part. She finally looked up from her phone. This hearing is adjourned. I sat back down. My hands were shaking so hard I had to press them against my knees to make them stop. No one had ever said anything like that about me before. Not a teacher, not a caseworker, not a foster parent. No one. People had called me resilient before, but it always felt like a backhanded compliment, like, you've been through hell, so you should be fine with a little more hell. But this was different. This was someone saying, you're not fine. You shouldn't have to be fine, and you deserve better. And for the first time in my life, I felt like maybe I wasn't broken. Maybe I wasn't the problem. Maybe I was enough. The judge ruled in my favor that day. I got the housing support, the resources, the chance to keep going. I moved into a small apartment 2 weeks later. It wasn't much, just a studio with a bathroom and a kitchenette. But it was mine. I didn't have to share it. Didn't have to worry about someone telling me to leave. Didn't have to keep my bag packed. I unpacked everything. I put my books on a shelf. I hung a picture on the wall. I bought a plant, because I was going to be there long enough to keep it alive. But that's not what stayed with me. What stayed with me was what the judge said. Because I'd spent 18 years believing I was forgettable, replaceable, unworthy of being chosen. But that judge didn't choose me. He saw me. And sometimes that's even more powerful. I'm in college now, it's hard. I'm working 2 jobs and taking classes and figuring out things most people learn from their parents, but I'm doing it. And every time I want to quit, every time I feel like I'm not good enough or smart enough or strong enough, I remember that courtroom. I remember that judge looking at me and saying, you are not just anything. If you've ever felt like you're just something, like your circumstances define your worth, I need you to hear this. You are not your label. You are not your struggle. You are not the things that happen to you. You are not the words people used to describe you when they thought you weren't listening. You are a person, a whole person, with dreams and fears and strengths and flaws and a future that hasn't been written yet. And you don't need someone to choose you, to prove that you matter. You already do. You always did. I walked out of that courtroom with my head up. Not because everything was fixed. Not because the past didn't hurt anymore. But because for the first time, I believed I was worth fighting for. Worth investing in. Worth seeing. And that made all the difference. Because when you spend your whole life being invisible, being seen changes everything. It changed everything for me. And I hope, wherever you are, whatever you're going through, that someone sees you too. Or that you learn to see yourself. Because you're not just anything, you're you. And that's more than enough.